the Movie Chick, coming to you with an extremely special guest today. This is Miss Kuoth Wiel, who I met last year back in Nashville. We were in Nashville when we met.
Yes.
I met her at the premiere of The Good Lie, which was a movie that she starred in alongside Reese Witherspoon, which is now playing on Showtime and HBO, by the way, guys, and I believe it's also on Netflix and Amazon, so there's no excuse for you to have not seen this movie yet, and now is so much more of an important time to watch it. So I know we talked a little bit back then, but I'd love to hear from you what the process was like getting involved in The Good Lie, because one of the things I loved is that you guys aren't just actors. They found you for a reason.
Yes. So I think as you see in the movie, it's there's a certain level of authenticity with all the characters and the story itself. I am a Sudanese refugee. I came here at a very young age, and I had a brother who was a lost boy, so that's how my connection with the lost boy story is. And so during the whole process of the movie was an educational experience for me, because I didn't know that story. I didn't know, the specifics of what happened in my country, why we had to leave, and things like that.
Because you were really young.
I was really young, yeah. And I didn't want to ask that, because, once you resettle in a different country, you're kind of in the phase of moving forward and not going backwards into specific details and things like that. So, and I felt it was very, it kind of came to me at the right time. I was mature, I was old enough, things like that. And so, so my own story with The Good Lie is that it is personal to me, but also, the fact that my story is also now used as a way to, educate people about refugees. Yeah.
I feel like this movie was a life-changing movie for me. I did not know about the Lost Boys, and because I did my homework when I was researching The Good Lie before I saw it, I watched documentaries one after another, and by the time I saw The Good Lie, I was so angry at what was going on that I couldn't wait to see this film. And then I saw this film and I even got more angry. And the reason why I got angry was because your character, Abital, comes into an even more difficult situation once she comes into the US, because she's separated from her family. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's so difficult for her to come back to see her brothers, not only because they need to find a family to host her, but because 9/11 had just happened. And because of the situation that our world is in today, I reached out to Kuoth because I have continuously seen misinformation go out on Facebook and social media about what's going on in both our country with refugee status and in Paris. And the Parisian attacks are horrific and they are terrible, and we don't want that to happen to anyone, but we can't allow more people to be victims, because then I feel like the terrorists win. And interestingly enough, the night before the Parisian attacks, I had watched The Good Lie. Just happened to happen. It was on the TV. I was going to bed. I had to go because it sucks me in every time. And I felt for your character even more the second time around. And then the next day, this all unfolded. And all I could think about was that character and that part in that story, because they wouldn't allow Abital to come to her family, and it was really hard to get that because 9/11 had just happened. So the refugee program stopped, which means thousands of millions of people no longer were able to get to some peace and some new life and another chance. How do you feel now, having come here as a refugee, having been in this amazing movie that I think everyone should have to see, and now this situation that's happening now, and all of these states are now saying no refugees, we won't allow it?
I mean, it's astonishing actually to see the reaction in terms of how much, these are our lawmakers. These are people that we have voted for. These are people we put in power. And the fact that people went and turned around and, saying we're not going to allow refugees because our own safety is in, it's like, okay. At the same time, not allowing refugees is kind of, letting those people who are attacking win.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to do. And
they want us to live in fear.
Exactly. It's a fear mechanism. And to me, it's very sad that America would be involved in something like this, because I'm a product of the refugee program. Right? Me being here is because of those laws that were put in place to help people who are vulnerable. And it's just, I don't know where, to even, it's like, in this kind of situation, I'm more angry because of the fact that, we are looking at them as if they're not also the victims of ISIS as well. They're not in the same place we are. It's like, yeah, they're also victims too. We have to put that in consideration. But us saying that no, we're not going to have refugees in this country because of our own safety, I think it's, we're giving into their fear.
Of course. And this country was built on immigration.
Exactly.
And immigrants.
Exactly.
I mean, my family came from Italy. It's like it's one of the things that I love about this, and it's one of the things I love about Obama, is to hear him speak and to say that he's enraged that lawmakers are coming around and do this was such, and sadly, by the time this all follows through, he won't be in office anymore, which is almost scary.
Yeah.
It's almost scary. So the reason why I wanted to speak with you more so, I'm from Rhode Island, and I know that I had just spoke to you about this, and I saw something shared on Facebook, and it was Rhode Island wants no more refugees, and I've always been really proud of where I came from, and coming to LA, I've been here 10 years. I know you're not originally from LA. It's hard to be away from my family, but I love to go home, and I don't want to go home now because I'm not proud of my state, because I feel like we have this unique opportunity in the United States to do something good. And I feel like the biggest problem is the misinformation that's going out. Do you remember much about the process when you came here?
Yes, I do actually. I remember it was a very lengthy process. I remember, they interview everyone. I remember my mom interviewed for a very long time. They asked you specifically, who you are, how you got to where your situation is. And, they had a person who was from, where we were from in Sudan, so they kind of knew kind of background information about where you would be going, things like that. And there was even a point where we were halted because, we had to go to medical screening as well. Yeah. And, one of our family members had to be treated for a whole year before we could even leave again.
Wow.
To the US. Yeah. That's how, rigorous it is. It's not only, the background process of it, but it's also, you also have to be physically.
And no wonder why you didn't want to ask about it, because not only were you leaving something that you didn't maybe understand what was happening, but then you had to go through this process, which has to be weighty on itself. I mean, that has to be scary and stressful to go through that.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned when doing my homework on this was that we as the U.S. have the most sophisticated vetting process to allow refugees into our country. So to hear you say that is exactly what I read, that it can sometimes take up to 2 years, and that they go check on what you tell them. So if you tell them that you come from a certain neighborhood and it was bombed and your village is no longer there, they go to that village and they check, and they don't actually send anyone out, but they use drone cameras to do that, which I thought was amazing. Like, to hear drones are actually being used for something good was really exciting. And then I also looked up some facts that I thought were crazy to me. I keep seeing these things passed around on Facebook about the Boston bombers being refugees, and about the 9/11 attackers being refugees. So I just want to read over some little facts that I read, that since 9/11, the U.S. has resettled 784,000 refugees. That is almost 1 million people. We've allowed almost 1 million people to come into this country and given them a second chance. And in those 14 years, only 3 of those people have been arrested. None of them have gone and done anything, but they were possibly planning terrorist attacks, and they were almost barely credible, but were still taken in because of it. Not a single refugee that's ever stepped on U.S. soil that's gone through our refugee program has ever committed an act of terrorism. Those are the numbers from the government. These are not websites like Huffington Post or CNN giving them information. I think what happens is when these tragedies happen, the first week of information that comes out, everyone's grasping at straws to tell people things, and they want to say this one's a refugee and that one's a refugee and this one's a refugee. While one of the Parisian attackers was a refugee, he didn't have refugee status in the U.S. He had refugee status in Europe. Europe has no vetting process. So I feel like when we see all these people saying these things and we get angry, we can't compare refugees coming into the US to refugees coming into Europe, because we have a vetting process. We have a 2-year process to make sure that the people coming here are the people that need to be coming here, and Europe does not. So they're allowing masses to come into their country, and then they're getting into the US by visas, which is a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
But I think for what's going on now, the biggest thing that people need to understand is that the refugees program that the US has been amazing, we've never had a problem. And amazing people like you and your family have come here and been able to get a second chance on life. I mean, can you imagine what your life would look like if you hadn't been allowed into the U.S.?
I mean, I guess I can't imagine it completely different in that sense. But it's within this whole process, the vetting process, the people have to understand that resettling someone in a different country is usually the last measure that the UN is going to go for. Because usually they want to know if the person can go back home, if they can resettle into the country they're currently in. So only 1% of those people, of how many people displaced today, are ever going to be resettled in a different country. So it's not like it's a huge amount of people. It's not.
And people don't understand that. They think that that's the first choice.
Yeah.
And the UN does a lot of work to go in and see if there's other places that they can go.
True.
One of the things that I think was so eye-opening for me was going to, in The Good Lie, when they went to Kakuma and they went to the refugee camp.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. So you visited there. What was it like to be there?
I didn't get to visit Kakuma, actually.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
But I did grow up in refugee camps in Ethiopia when I was growing up as a young girl. And yeah, I mean, the movie, gives you a glimpse.
Just
of
a small one.
Yeah, just a small glimpse of what that life is like. But even to be able to recreate it, I think for me was a very emotional process. This is a place where I used to live. This is something that I, was a part of my life at one point in time. And so to be able to go through that and, walk through different avenues of a refugee camp, and it's just, it kind of put us back into, it's like a humbling feeling of, where you come from and how far we've come with that. But also to be able to recreate it was a huge responsibility for any of us at all. And, I think I want people to know that a refugee camp is temporary basis. It's nothing that is meant for you to call home at all. And so with all these resettlement programs that are trying to move people from one place to another, it's because they can't go back to their homes. They're pushed out. And if they can, I'm pretty sure anybody would go back home if you had a choice in that sense. So it's looking at it as if, these people are not home, so where else can they go? But they have nowhere to go. And that the UN and all of these resettlement programs, they only resettle people who are most vulnerable.
Right.
And so that's children, that's families, elderly.
Yeah.
And so you have to know that even within what you think is a refugee, is that right now they're going to only submit the people who are at the most risk. And that's mostly orphan children right now.
Yeah.
And so for us to say no, I think it's...
I saw the most interesting thing yesterday. I saw someone share that it said if your neighbor's house burnt down and they didn't have anywhere to go and they didn't have clothes, you would open your doors and you would tell them to come stay with you and you would give them clothes. If someone down the street's house burnt down, you may open their house to them. How far away does somebody have to be displaced for you to say no, let someone else help them? And that to me was very emotional and also very eye-opening, because it's true. Why does the distance that someone is make us say we don't want to help them? And why are we so afraid of something that's so different? When I look at the images from the Syrian refugee camps, much like when I saw the Sudanese refugee camps, I just was so sad. And I have taken so much for granted in my life and where I've lived and what I've grown up with, and I see these situations and I just feel like, why would we not want to help them, especially when we can, and when, like you said, it's 1% that gets displaced to another country. So to me, if 1% was 1 million people, that's a huge amount of people that we can be big brothers to and help and allow to have a much better life. Did you get to see the Good Lie with your family? Did you ever get to watch it?
Yeah, I did.
What was that? What did they think when
I've
they
seen
saw
it several
it?
times, actually. No, it's just, it's a weird feeling, I guess. Depending on who in my family. I remember I watched it with my mother, and she was like very taken back by the whole movie in general. But no, it's for us. I think it's kind of a it's a reminder of a journey in a way. Yeah. To see this was you then, and then this is you now. But at the same time, I think it kind of for them it's an eye-opening experience, because they kind of understand my process as what I do for work in that sense, and going to that place. I think they kind of knew how much I sacrificed in order to be there. And so I'm very glad they got to see it, and to see them let them see my sacrifice, but also, you know, this is a story that connects all of us, everyone. It's not only Sudanese people. I think it's a human story, and so that puts it there where it needs to be. And sometimes it's, you know, people will have no questions; they just kind of absorb it, and that's what I love about it.
And what an important time for people to watch a film like that, because it's not a documentary. Some people won't watch documentaries, they fear watching them, or they want the entertainment value. And The Good Life gives the entertainment value, but also gives this amazing, courageous story that right now is crucial to people understanding, I feel like. If you could sit down with one person that doesn't believe we should continue the refugee program in the U.S. right now, what would you want to say to them?
I mean, I don't know. For me, it's, you know, to put into perspective that, you know, we are a country of immigrants. Unless you're Native American, we immigrated. So to put that into perspective and say, you know, where your ancestors were, how many years back, whether it's 50 or 100 years, that's where these people are today. And, you know, they want to start over, just like you had a chance to do so. And so I think to put that into perspective, where it might be your ancestors who came here, and not you, but at the same time, they are a product of who you are, you know, of who you are today. So in that sense, you know, it is within all of our bloodstream that, you know, we did migrate here. So why would we allow our doors to open?
And do your homework.
I'm like,
do your homework. Because the numbers, you can't argue with numbers. You can't, I mean, when I was looking articles up, I found a lot of articles that were being shared that were from 2012, 2013. That information's changed. Some of them were from first weeks after attacks, where the information isn't correct yet. And also understanding the difference between the refugee program in the US and the refugee program elsewhere. And knowing that if someone has a refugee status in Europe does not mean that they were given refugee status in the US. And that's a very big difference, which I didn't understand. And I think it's an important thing to understand, because while the Boston bomber's father was given a refugee status in another country, he was not given refugee status in the US because he was given asylum. So, and these things, these words that I had no idea what they meant are being thrown around on all these news channels and on Facebook and through social media, and they're fueling fire, and they're not correct.
I mean, it's playing into, you know, an element of fear. Everyone jumps to fear. And I think that people need to know the difference between grieving and being angry. Those are two different things.
Very different.
And it's almost as if we don't allow time for us to grieve, we just kind of jump to the last resort. And then later on, then you correct your action. That's not how properly it should be. It's like this event that happened in Paris, I was like, I was there 2 years ago. My country was in civil war. We're still in civil war right now. So it's like, you know, I stopped. I'm like, okay, what's going on? How is this? It kind of put me back into that place. And then I sense, you know, where these people are coming from. You know, these are people I found. These are people who are every day, you know, they were living their life like as if we were. And so we need to put that into perspective, but not jump into these conclusions and saying, oh, these are the people that caused it, so we should stop them, when in reality, the facts are not there until everything is kind of settled out.
And could you imagine if that happened on U.S. soil? How would we feel if countries told us that we were not allowed to come there and get safety?
And I think that's what the problem is. It's because we haven't dealt with being removed from who we are.
Right.
That's that whole
I
problem.
mean, 9/11 was a very small compared to what's happening in these other countries.
Happening. But it's like we have not been forced to be removed. So in that sense, we're comfortable.
Right.
And we're comfortable with, you know, criticism while sitting down. It's like, you can't do this.
But yet we ask our lawmakers, we ask our police enforcers to think first and act later.
Yeah.
And there's constant police violence, and there's constant things that are happening in the news, and we're saying to our police officers and our lawmakers, no, we have to think first, not act first, because when we act first and think later, tragedy happens. Well, we got to do that now. This is a perfect example of we have to do what we're telling others to do.
It's unfortunate. For me, it's very unfortunate, because we expect our lawmakers to actually know the information. It's like as if they don't know these facts that you just read.
Right.
Do they not look at these facts?
Right.
When they should be required to.
I mean, if I can find them,
anybody
can find them.
It's like, if you're gonna make laws, you should at least know. Like, and this, you know, there was a new bill that's being passed in, I think it was in the House or something, that it's making the process of screening much harder for refugees.
Which I can't even imagine how it would be harder.
And I was like, wow, these are, people, there are some people from even where I'm from, Minnesota, where I grew up, who are opposed to refugees being resettled there. And I was like, okay, so, put myself back in that place. How many years ago? Because I do come from a country that was seen as sponsoring terrorism. That's why 9/11, we were stopped from, although it wasn't us, country was involved. So in that sense, where people would have been like, no, they can't come in here. And already you go through this process, your heart is ready to move on.
Of course.
And then when people stop you, it's like, okay, but am I not human?
And I can imagine that every time something like this happens, you feel that same.
You do. You almost, for them, I was like, we don't need to put any blame on victims anymore.
No.
Well, I think the one thing I would really like to touch on is that, refugees have contributed so much to our own society. I remember the other day, I think it was Madeline Albright, she was talking about, we're playing into the fear of ISIS by not letting people come in, because she's also a product of refugees, she's a refugee herself. And
so is Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs' dad was a refugee.
Yeah.
We would not have the camera that is shooting this right now, the computer that is putting that picture on.
Exactly.
I mean, Steve Jobs' father was a refugee.
It's like you never. What's sad about it is that you never know.
No.
So you don't know what background your neighbor has until you actually go ask them and figure that out. I have a lot of friends who didn't even know that I was a refugee.
Wow.
And that's like, for me, it's okay. Is the education process.
Of course.
Is also very weak, because we don't, in schools, they don't teach you about refugees. Now I feel like now they're starting to integrate it into like the curriculum.
I didn't learn about
it. But before, no,
yeah.
you don't know, there's actually about 70,000 people migrate to this country every year. And I think it was 40% of them are refugees.
I didn't know a lot until I did my homework for The Good Lie. I didn't, and it was so eye-opening. And part of that's my own ignorance to not watching CNN and not watching the current things that are going on. But why I stopped is because of the misinformation. Because they want to put that news out so instantly that they're putting out news and they don't have all the information, and then weeks or months later you're finding out the truth. And I don't want to judge first and think later. I want to try to be the person that thinks first and doesn't judge, because I feel like one of the reasons why I got into this business especially is because I enjoy having a platform to be able to do something bigger. And while movies are entertaining and wonderful, there are movies like The Good Lie, there are movies like a million other movies that I can't think of the names of on the top of my head, that are movies that change your life, and they make you want to be a better person while telling an amazing story, while educating, while giving you a glimpse into what another person is going through. I mean, I look at Fruitvale Station constantly and Michael B. Jordan and thinking about that movie and how close that happened to where I live and what I would have done if I was in that situation and I was there and saw a man shot for no reason. So there's amazing films, and if I can talk about them and talk about the way they're entertaining and fun, and then I can talk to you about why right now is the worst time to stop a refugee program, then to me it's all worth it at the end of the day, because this is more important. This is something that I can do to help educate people and talk to you and help give people an understanding of, here's a person that we are watching in this amazing movie that wouldn't be here in this country if it wasn't for the refugee program. And that to me is amazing, because that's a full circle. And to be able to sit here and talk with you about it is just, I've been emotional all day thinking about it. I was like, I will make it through this interview without crying. I will do it because I can't let my makeup run, and I don't want to make, it's emotional to sit with you in a time like this when I'm seeing my family and my friends saying, close the doors. And I'm like, but no. Wait. And I kept telling all of them, wait till you watch this interview. Just wait until you meet this amazing woman, because I remember when I met you and all the boys in Nashville, I sat with Gur for, it is Gur. Proper way. I sat with Gur for hours at the hotel bar after the red carpet, and he was just telling stories and sharing things with me, and I could not stop crying. Not, and it wasn't in a way that I feel bad for you, because I don't ever want it to be seen that way, but it was in a way of, I can't believe these things are happening and I didn't know about them, and what can I do to help? And just like you, I follow him on social media, and I love seeing all the work that he's doing in other countries and constantly using his voice in an amazing way, just like you are. And to see that full circle come is pretty special. So I can't thank you enough for coming and sitting and chatting with me today. This is such an important issue that I want people to know about, and also an amazing movie that, with or without what's going on, people should see. So we do this really fun segment on our show. We do a weekly show and talk about movies, and we call it "If You Haven't Seen This, We Can't Be Friends." And it is a movie that is a favorite of yours that you think everyone should see. So what would be your favorite movie that you think everyone should see? It's a test. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
There's so many.
A lot of movies. Let's see. The latest one that I saw, actually, Sicario.
Yes. Amazing. Emily Blunt. Oh.
Yes. The performance, everything, but also the story itself. You know, this is
Yeah.
something that's right next door to us.
And happening.
Yeah. And so that was, for me, was everything from, you know, that, obviously, that. It's just like, but also, a really fun one.
I know. So many great ones. I chose The Good Lie last night when we shot our show, which will be airing today, because not only is it important, but it's one of those movies that I feel like if you're my friend, you have to have seen it. And I've also picked Heathers in the past. And Harry Potter, of course.
Yes.
Because if you haven't seen Harry Potter, we definitely cannot be friends. We can't be friends.
Right. Oh my goodness. Harry Potter is actually pretty good. I would definitely recommend that. I don't know. It's just. I feel like movies always hit me in different like, emotional realms.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been watching a lot of Criterion movies. Just.
All right, that's all right. That's all right. Oh my God. Don't worry, but we got the first one, so we're good. We'll just we'll go with the first one. If people, I know that you've also had another film since The Good Lie. You worked on another film.
Yeah.
So where is that? Because that's in production. Or you might not be able to talk about it. Can you talk about it?
Is it Headlock?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be done in production.
Yeah, it says they're done with production.
Yeah, I have
So
a small part in that.
yeah, so you have a part in Headlock, and do you have anything else coming up that we can check you out in?
Not that I can talk about, but
I love it.
Right.
That's good news, though.
Right? Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited to see Headlock, and where can people follow you? You're on social media, on Twitter?
Yeah, I guess everything. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And your Twitter handle is your full name, Kuoth Wiel?
Kuoth Wiel, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I will put that at the bottom of the screen so you guys know how to spell it. Thank you so much for sitting and chatting with me today. This was so much fun and so important, and I can't wait for people to see it. So, and I can't wait to see you on the big screen again.
Right.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel at TheMovieChickk with 2 Ks like me. Don't forget to check out This Week in Movie News, and we also have the red carpet for The Good Dinosaur that you won't want to miss. Thank you guys so much, and see you next time. Bye. Perfect. Thank you so much.
That was
Yeah, it's fun and easy. I'm just gonna grab my roommate to come take a picture really quick, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Oh, I just lost the little microphone part. Because I'd love to take a picture to put on
that would be
social
awesome.
media.